So, I had a request in one of my previous videos to talk about the battery life, and it was something I'd wanted to do. So, how was I going to do the battery life? Well, I don't want to just run some basic tests. I want to do some more real-world examples of it. That's the whole point of these videos. So, I'm just going to be talking over what I'm showing on the screen. You can see my basic CPU stats, temperatures, battery level, and you can see the information from Lenovo as well as Windows that I'm showing on the screen now. What I'm going to do is I've got it plugged in, and remember I'm running in eco mode, so it's limited to 60% of total battery life right now. It will not charge above that simply due to the way I have the battery set. This means it charges extremely quickly, but it also shortens my overall battery life. For this test, that's not a problem though. I've also got this set up on the floor down near the charger, so the intakes are sucking in essentially the carpet right now to bump the temps up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm going to do a bit of very, very light gaming, and I'm going to do a bit of YouTube as just kind of a basic usage on this thing. So if you're just drawing and doodling on something, or you're surfing the web, doing some PowerPoint, Excel, listening to music in the background, this will give you kind of a better idea of what you can expect. So I'm going to start playing one of my videos. Nothing fancy, just some basic Tower 3D. I am recording this over a remote session, so there is that happening in the background as well. And just as a general idea, we're going to see how fast this drops. Now, because the battery isn't fully charged and isn't fully balanced because there's empty space within the cells, it does drop from 60 to 59 fairly quickly. That's not a problem, and that's not really a concern. This application is reading some different stats off the system, but we'll see how this changes. So if I look at Windows now, you can see that it's giving me about 3.5 hours at the current usage of YouTube. That's pretty good. If I add another 40%, I'm looking at about 6 to 7 hours of just sitting there watching YouTube. I keep my screen pretty dark for the most part because I'm either in my house or I'm in a darker room where I don't need full screen brightness. And you can see I have the power mode set to basically economy within Windows to keep it as low as possible. So I'm just going to pull up a hefty website such as CNN.com, let that run in the background with whatever the news is going on, because it's going to be pinging out for updates and thinking about things. CPU usage, you can see the CPU cores are active. The overall speed is pretty low, still at 1.2 gigahertz essentially, so it's not really pushing much. Temperatures remain consistent, and there's not really anything going on. I mean, the Wi-Fi's not having any problems. There's not a lot of draw. And that's what's important about this. Because the system is a beefy CPU to be able to handle a lot of higher functionality, but with these economy modes, they're able to further clock it down and save aspects of the system for later usage. It helps the battery run a little better. So opening this application, you could probably see the CPU on the right side spiked up for a minute, but that's okay. We're just discharging right now. Lenovo and Windows seem to be in good sync. I know in the previous video I mentioned that they didn't always seem to be that way. I think there was another subsequent update to it, and the two seem to be a lot more in sync now than they were previously, which is a good thing because I was kind of confused as to why one would say something drastically different than the other. But overall, that's where we stand at this moment. So we're coming up on about 4 minutes here in 15 seconds, and we are still at 1% with just YouTube. Now, again, this is 4 minutes. This isn't a big deal. But if we're talking about background CPU threads, listening to music, surfing the web, and doing some other light, moderate usage, if you're running in eco mode, being able to get the time out of the system is good. Now, you can see it just ticked over to 58% in Lenovo, and now I've got 4.5 hours of usage at this current rate. And that may or may not be accurate because, again, we're dealing with Windows and Lenovo trying to estimate your usage, which is always changing. Every time the percent ticks down one, these numbers will change. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's just the way it's going to go. But I can say that this is pretty accurate because for the most part my usage lately has been just a little bit of YouTube, and I end up getting about, from the 60%, I end up getting about 4 to 5 hours of just perusing YouTube. And typically when I do go to YouTube just to relax, catch up on the channels I'm watching, I'll go to YouTube, I'll hit up all the recommended videos or the alerts on videos from the channels I'm subscribed to, and I'll open anywhere from 4 to 15 different videos, and then I'll just cut through each one and close out the tabs. Well, running all those tabs in the background chomps through more memory, requires more CPU, and I still get about 4 to 5 hours of battery life out of that just from watching some basic YouTube, and that's not too bad. I'm watching it 1080p, sometimes full screen, sometimes not, because I may be surfing the web on another browser tab while I'm listening to the video in the background, or I've got it on, I take one tab into the separate side of the screen and surf on one side while the video is playing on the other. So it's not like I'm just staring at a movie, letting it do its thing. I'm doing more on this system. So the statement of 4.5 hours is pretty accurate here from what I've seen out of this, and that's, to me, very impressive for this usage. On my Surface, the battery was never great. Through Windows 8 going in and limiting the max CPUs and the package of utilization to about 80% on battery and stuff, I was able to get about 3 hours at the best out of it. That's not great, but it's not bad considering what it was. Once I started really opening a lot more tabs, trying to put a lot more HD videos through it, the Wi-Fi was straining a lot more, the battery life came down, and I was usually by the end getting maybe 1.5 hours out of the battery life on it, maybe 2 hours if I was careful, and that was pretty terrible. So to be able to go from 100% charge, giving me 2 hours at best of moderate usage, to a 60% charge, giving me 4 to 5 hours, that's really good, considering that I still have another 20% locked away. Now, if I was going on a trip or something where I may not be at a charger for a while, then I would definitely take it out of eco mode and give it a 100% charge. But similar with my smartphones and other things, charging about 80% does help the longevity of the batteries, especially with these quick chargers that are shoving so much power down the pipe. That's why when you're charging these devices, they go really fast for the first, up to about the first hour, and then they slow way down because, well, the battery's getting full and it takes a while to fit it with power. So again, so far, so good. No big deal. We're almost at 7.5 minutes, and you can see we're still at 58% battery life with YouTube in the background, active monitors going on, so, as well as my remote session. So not too bad. What I'd like to do now, though, is fire up a bit of a game, and let's see what happens with the game. So I've done a bit of surfing. I've got some stuff up. I want to see what happens with the game. Now, I'm going to speed the game up just because it's boring to listen to me drone on for 20 minutes. But in this, I'm going to have basic stuff open in the background. You can see the percentage just ticked down to 57%, and now I've got 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it has dropped back down with the changes as it dials in. The longer you keep the same utilization, the more accurate the reading will get. But keep in mind that as the system fluctuates, it's just kind of working around averages. So it's still within the threshold that I'm okay with. So anyway, in this game, what I am going to be doing is just some very basic balloons tower defense. Nothing fancy. It's not going to stress the CPU. It is going to pump up the performance out of the CPU a little bit, but it's not going to really drive it that crazy. It's not going to make the fans ramp up to 100%. It's just some basic activity that you could simulate with Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, high-end Sketchpad work while streaming. There's a lot of different things that you could correlate into this being what you would represent to yours, and that's why I wanted to show this. So I'm going to speed this up just to cover the time frame. Basically, I play for about 10. I play for about 11 minutes of this game, and we came in here shortly after hitting 57%. So I'm going to speed this up, let us zip on through it, and we'll see where we end up at the end of this, and that's where I'll come back and kind of highlight what's going on. So I've got this running at quite a bit faster speed. When this is all said and done, we'll take a look at the charts and see how we fared, as it were. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how basic usage goes. Now again, ramping up with a heavy game, which is constantly ramping the CPU and higher activity and cooling and fans, it's definitely going to drain the battery a lot faster. But let's see how it happens. All right, so we are out of the game. You can see we have dropped from 57 down to 50%. Again, that was about 10 11 minutes of total gaming time. You can see the CPUs were definitely a lot more utilized, and we were up in the 3 gigahertz range, but we weren't really stressing the system compared to what it's capable of based on playing Ring of Elysium and some of the other games that would really hammer the system. And again, Windows was still set to the lower power mode, but you can see it's dropped down to 51% registered within Windows, and we're down to about 1 hour and 41 minutes of utilization. So we basically cut an extra 2 hours off of its life in 10 minutes of playing the game. Now, if you're going to do any serious gaming, then you're going to want to plug the unit in. That way you're not sucking life out of the battery, and it can pull what it needs from the charger. But if you are out and about, you're going to be away for a while, or you want to do something that's a little more intense on the unit, you do have the battery life to get it done. If I did any type of gaming on my Surface Pro, battery life pretty much went down to either 30 minutes to an hour tops from a full charge, based on the utilization I mentioned a few moments ago. So that's pretty brutal, and this is pretty good. I'm impressed overall with that. Now, again, keep in mind, gaming is going to force the CPU to basically ramp itself up to full power. Normal utilization, you're not sitting there with a full load on the computer. If you're going to be doing any gaming, you're typically going to be in a place where you're going to plug it in. Now, having an hour and roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours on the 60% charge of straight gaming is pretty good, considering that I'm doing 1080p in that particular game, and I had the laptop set on the carpet on the floor. You can see the max temperature was 96 Celsius, but when we exited, it was nowhere near that high. So I'm impressed. I think it's pretty good. It's definitely a huge step up. You just have to be realistic with your expectations on what the system can do and what's reasonable with utilization. So regular usage, you can easily see between 6 to 8 hours of usage out of this system from a full charge. If you run it at 60%, 4 to 5 hours is what you can expect out of it from the configuration that I have. If you're running an i7, expect to take anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes off of that. And if you're running the 4K display on top of that, expect to take another 30 to 60 minutes off of that battery life, just due to the higher utilization. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.